Hey y'all, I'm Hope. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my final wrap up for 2023 with all of the books that I read in December. I ended up having a pretty good reading month in December, and I read 6 books overall, which I was pretty happy with. That was not quite as many as I had hoped, but like still a good number, and I feel like I ended the year pretty strong with some of the stuff that I read. So the first book that I read this month was Mammoths at the Gates by Niveau, which is the 4th or 5th book, I think 4th book in the Singing Hills cycle. In this installment, she is returning home to Singing Hills Abbey, and they encounter some sort of conflict going on there. And this is very much a book that's like about grief and how different people deal with that, and about stories and how you like encapsulate a life in stories. And I just thought this one was fantastic. I think it really hit close to home for me in a lot of ways, particularly in some of its discussion around the way that like the people we love may not always be like 100% good people, but they're still worthy of love, and that doesn't like mean they're bad people. So I really enjoyed a lot of the discussions in here about grief and grieving, and about like remembering the people that we care about. And I just thought it was a really fantastic installment. I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes next in this series. And I think this book is my favorite so far in the series. But I think we're getting book 5 in the middle of next year, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So this was a really strong start to my reading month. Then I read, if I can get a hold of it, man, it doesn't want to come off the desk. I read The Christmas Appeal by Janice Hallett, and this one was pretty fun. This is a kind of Christmas episode spinoff of The Appeal, which is a mystery series, or not mystery series, but like The Appeal is a mystery book told through emails. This is a mystery told through like emails and WhatsApp messages, but this is all taking place within a community theater group, and the kind of interpersonal drama and politicking that's going on with this like theater group, especially in the wake of the events that have happened in The Appeal. So this one is happening right around Christmas time, while the group is like putting together their Christmas performance of Jack and the Beanstalk, and there's like a lot of drama happening in the group. There's some backstabbing, and then in the midst of all this, a body turns up, and so they have to figure out kind of what's going on. I really enjoyed this. This was really fun. I read it in like a single evening. I only gave it 3.5 stars, but I had a lot of fun with it. I just think that the pacing is a little bit strange because it's so short, because most of the book is spent with the like interpersonal drama, and the body doesn't turn up for quite a while. So it felt like there was a lot of build up and then not a lot of time for the story to kind of get wrapped up. And I felt like the ending was kind of abrupt. But that being said, I had a lot of fun with this one, and I'm looking forward to Janice Hallett's next book as well. I've read 2 of hers now. I still need to read the Twyford Code, which I need to like restart. I'd started it and had kind of a struggle with it, but I'm going to restart that one and give it another try. But I think this is a really fun one, and if you're looking for like a Christmassy mystery, I know it's a little bit late now because Christmas has just passed, but I think this is a good one if you want to pick it up for like Christmas 2024. This is a really fun one for the like winter season. Then I read Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments by T.L. Huchu, which is the 2nd book in the Edinburgh Night series. I really enjoyed this. I love this series. I think it's so fun. It's an urban fantasy series set in as you might have guessed, Edinburgh, and it's following Ropa Moyo, who is a ghost talker. She can talk to ghosts, and in the first book, she gets roped into solving a mystery kind of on the side and through her job as a ghost talker, where she is like delivering messages for ghosts. I think I've just been very redundant in that description, but you get the point. She talks to ghosts, she delivers messages for them, and then in this one, her business has kind of hit a bit of a speed bump because of the events of the first book, and so she's looking for a new way to make money. She's looking at getting an apprenticeship within the magical, Magical Society for Skeptical Inquirers, I think is what they call it here, and she's looking to get this apprenticeship that will hopefully pay her well, and at the same time, she kind of gets roped into investigating when this, like, boarding school kid ends up in a coma, and her friend Priya, who is a healer, is like, hey, we need somebody who's good at like investigating to figure out what's going on, because we can't figure out what's wrong with him, and if we can't figure out what's wrong with him, we can't help him. So she gets involved in trying to solve that, and it's just one of those where like a bunch of different threads come together, and I thought the mystery was really engaging. I thought it was really fun. There were lots of like small twists and turns that I felt like kept me guessing as I was reading, and I just really enjoyed the way that Ropa and her relationships with her friends and with her grandmother and her little sister and her mentor all kind of like evolved over the course of this book. I just think it's really fun, and Ropa is a fascinating protagonist to follow. She has such an interesting worldview, and I am looking forward to the 3rd book in this series like so much. After that, I read A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare, and mostly I can say that this sure was a Shakespeare. Yeah, it was. I had fun reading it. I don't really understand what I read, and I feel like the pacing of this one is odd. I think it's one that I really need to like see as a performance instead of reading as a play because I really didn't understand some of the pacing. It feels like the conflict is resolved like far too quickly. So I just don't think I totally vibed with this one, but I do think it's kind of fun and there's a lot of like really good jokes in here. So I had like a fun time reading it. It just didn't totally make sense to me why some of the things that were happening, if that makes sense. After that, I ended up reading Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson, which is a thriller about a woman who can't remember anything from day to day. Basically, she's had a traumatic brain injury and she wakes up every day thinking that she's either a child or maybe like in her early 20s, only to discover that she's actually 47. Her life is mostly behind her at this point, and she's like in a strange place with a strange man who's like, I'm your husband, we've been married for years, and she has to like readjust to that reality every single day. And so as the story is unfolding, she's starting to learn like little bits and pieces of her life that she can't remember, and she ends up keeping a journal and writing all of it down, so she actually starts to remember things, or at the very least she can like recall them because she's reading them again later, and she starts to know some inconsistencies in the things that she's being told. So it starts to become clear that something is going on, that she's not being told something, some things are being hidden from her, and you gotta kind of go with her to figure out why she's being like misled on some of these things. So I think this one's really interesting. It's kind of billed as like, I say kind of, there is a blurb on here that says that it's a lot like the movie Memento. In fact, it says Memento on crystal meth. It's a blurb from Dennis Lehane. And I think that that is a really inaccurate description of this book because it is a very slow-paced book for most of it. I think it's sold as a thriller, but it's much more literary for like the first 70%. Actually, more than that. I think it's like the last 70 pages where it really like becomes a thriller. There's a lot of like unsettling tension that's building throughout the story. We were starting to realize some of the things that she's being lied to about, or that people are just kind of hiding from her, and you're not sure why that's happening or who is actually telling her the truth, if anyone. And so I feel like there's a really interesting build of this like dramatic tension, but I wouldn't call it a thriller. I think for most of it, it's this kind of melancholy meditation on memory and what is life like without memory. Who are we? What are we if we can't remember our past? Who are we without a history? And how does like not having a memory impact her day-to-day life and her ability to like form and maintain relationships with people? So I think it's a really fascinating book. I just don't think it's a thriller until you get to like the last 70 pages. And there was like 2 twists at the end, one of which I saw coming like a mile away, and the other one I actually liked. I thought it was good, it caught me off guard, and it made sense, and it recontextualized everything else in a really interesting way. So I did really enjoy the ending. It just was a strange like pacing change. So I had a lot of fun with this one, and I'm glad that I waited until I was like an adult to read this, because this has been on my shelf since I was in like high school, but I feel like I got a lot more out of it because so much of it is kind of meditation on memory than I would have gotten like if I'd read it in high school. So I'm glad that I've read it now, and I can finally say that this 10-year-old book on my shelf, 10-plus-year-old book on my shelf is read. I don't know who to recommend it to exactly though, because it's so odd. It's much more literary, I think, than the description would lead you to believe, or some of the blurbs. So I think if you wanted to pick this one up, I highly recommend doing so because it's a really interesting experience, but just know that it's like far more literary and more about like memory and how it impacts this woman's life than it is about like the thriller elements. So I think if you kind of go in with those expectations, you'll have a good time with this one. The final thing I read, I really loved. This was Digger Unearthed by Ursula Vernon, and this is, I think, a YA like graphic novel about a wombat named Digger of Unnecessarily Convoluted Tunnels, and she digs a tunnel into a temple of Ganesh. She doesn't know exactly how she got here. There seems to be magic involved, and she's trying to figure out how she can get home again. It's this like very long graphic novel about her journey of trying to figure out how to get home. And she's meeting all of these like really weird and interesting characters who I thought were all fantastic. She's meeting like hyenas, and there's like a little shadow entity who's really scary but also like really sweet. And there's like a talking statue, and there's like a religious justice, like religious associated justice system thing going on. So there's just like lots of really fascinating elements. I think it's a really weird story, and I just really enjoyed it. It's a little bit slow for most of it, and I think the ending is a little bit too quick because it's lots and lots of build and then a very rapid resolution. But I really enjoyed all of the relationships that Digger ended up having throughout the book, and I thought that all of the characters were so interesting, and also like it's just fun. It's like you're following a wombat trying to get home, and I just thought she was a really fun character, and it was just fun I'm gonna say fun about 50 more times, because that is really how I felt about this book. It was just really good fun. Also, it has some really poignant moments, and it has some really interesting discussions about like morality. And I think the one that really stuck with me the most is there's a really fascinating discussion of like abuse and also the bystander effect that I think is tackled in a really like thoughtful, respectful way. And so I really enjoyed that this took on some difficult topics, but managed to keep this like lightheartedness while also addressing those in a way that I think was really like direct and respectful and thoughtful and engaging. So it was a really good experience, and I cannot more highly recommend that you pick this one up because it was just a fantastic reading experience. So these are all the books that I read in December. I had a pretty good reading month. I'm really happy with everything I ended up reading, and I'm feeling really motivated and positive about my reading going into the new year. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite thing was that you read in 2023, and I really hope that you had a lovely holiday and a happy new year, and I hope you've enjoyed this video as well. So if you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.